Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. We have a cultural phenomenon in progress here. LaMarvelous, the Thriller, the L Train. I don't know. We got our own L Train. Luke Jones joining us. Luke, I need some Royal Farms coffee here in my Cole Roofing 100-year mug, and to just sit back and Peter King in town, going to hang out with me later this week, writing about Lamar. Dan Pompei last week in town, writing about Lamar for The Athletic. Sam Farmer in, and oh, by the way, we're not going to Hollywood, Florida this week. We're going to Hollywood, California this week. And, man, I watched the LA Memorial Coliseum, and that's the next stop. Dude, what's going on here? All I need is Howard Cosell and Dandy Don to come back for next Monday night, right?
Well, the Ravens are kind of a big deal right now. I mean, that's just, I don't know how else to express it when you're talking about a team that has gone on the kind of winning streak that they've gone on. They're 8-2, first time since 2012. Even go back and look at 2012, and we're talking about a Super Bowl season right there. That 8-2 was not nearly as convincing, as dominant as this 8-2 has been. I said it to you in one of our previous segments. We talked so much about this tough stretch the Ravens had coming up after that first Cincinnati game, 6 of 7 against teams with winning records. And when you go into one of those stretches, what do you typically think? Well, if you can go 4-3, if you could go 5-2, that's absolutely great. Well,
yeah, I mean, you want to win all the home games. You want to beat the bad teams on the road, and sort of give away that like you're going to lose in Seattle.
Steal one at some point, right?
Right.
You know, steal a Seattle game, steal the Rams game. Well, 4 games into this 7-game stretch, they're 4-0, and they've won those games by 101 points. I mean,
that's all.
It's like a dominant college football team right now. That's what it kind of feels like as far as steamrolling a Houston. I mean, even Earl Thomas said after Sunday's game that he was a little surprised by that, which probably says a lot about the Ravens and probably says something about the Texans coming off the bye week.
Well, dude, I mean, RG3 came in and pushed him around at the end, and that really did feel like, Auburn's unleashed the JV on Poor Pacific or whatever,
Right, but it wasn't. I mean, Houston's they entered the week as the third best team in the AFC, which probably says a lot about the AFC as well when you kind of look at the top now, and it's New England who took care of business somehow against Philadelphia. I mean, that defense is legit. But
you know what? I cry me no river for the AFC, where for all of our adult lives, it's been Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and some combination of Ben Roethlisberger, some guy like that in the way, right? So, maybe this is our moment. I'm all giddy reading up all the background that Eric DeCosta's given away to the national writers that he doesn't tell me anymore, and that everyone's seeking out the root of how all of this is happening, right? Like, and I guess it may even lead to even more fascinating conversations for you and I as we try to dissect it, because it is descended upon you and I very, very quickly, right? Like, how long ago were you and I coming down the mountain from Pittsburgh after a long drive thinking, this is nice. Maybe this is the year they'll win 10 or 11, right? Like, right. I didn't think that Michael Jordan would be here before I had Thanksgiving, right?
No question about it. I mean, how about the fact that if you look at the Ravens' offense right now, I looked this up late Sunday night as the Rams were closing out the victory against the Bears, and Mitchell Trubisky was getting benched / his hip hurt, whatever the story was.
By the way, man, it's a number 2 pick in the draft. I mean, it's crazy.
A team that traded up for him when Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, Sunday notwithstanding, Deshaun Watson's still on the board. But that aside, I was looking this up. The Ravens' franchise record for touchdowns scored in a season is 47. They did that in 2009. That was the year, Flacco took a nice step forward in his second year. McGahee had a bunch of touchdowns. Ray Rice had a bunch of touchdowns. LaRon McClain was still kind of the last head of that 3-headed monster at running back. Well, 47 touchdowns is the franchise record for a single season. The Ravens have 41, and we're still a week out from Thanksgiving. So it just speaks to what this...
They're playing pitch and catch right now, right? And it doesn't look like Kurt Warner did, right? Like when you look at these other, or Randall Cunningham when he had Carter and a young Moss and Smith and, all of that, the Billick offense. I mean, these great offenses that put up these numbers. I mean, Brady's had some gaudy stuff, right? Manning's had a lot of sort of, but the way Manning's looked a lot like Warner's. Brady's has its own sort of look and Gronkowski thing, but it's all check down, it's all crisscross, it's all Bill Walsh, right? It's all short passing, combined with sort of some fake runs and some sort of ball tricks and whatnot. But football has looked the same way for 30 years, and that's when I start seeing like Peter King, who I've been reading since the birth of the internet, literally, since before that, since he sat next to me at the Paris Glendenning, Browns glass cup thing in the parking lot, how much football's changed, where this is what a 47 touchdown offense looks like. It looks like what every offensive coordinator for a generation would have said, that's a Navy offense, that's a bumper car offense. Nobody's that fast. Nobody's that good. You can't find me that player. You can't build me that football player and then build me the team around it, right? Which speaks to Trubisky and all these other guys who struggle because they are being asked to do something different at the NFL level than what they were being asked to do at the collegiate level, which is why Brian Billick fell in love with Kyle Bowler thinking he's getting a pro-set Tedford offense or whatever. But times they haven't changed, right? Like the story here, the forensics on this, if they win a championship, and God forbid I'm up another 100 nights writing Purple Rain 3, making no money for it for an audience that doesn't read books anymore. But Luke, the forensics on this are so different because this really is about building something that nobody else ever really wanted to build. A Tesla, so to speak, a different kind of car, a Wonkavator, right?
Yeah, it is, but at the same time, it's also going back in time because I'm looking right now at the post-game notes where the Ravens PR staff comes up with all the different factoids and team records and things of that nature. The Ravens are the first team to have 2,000-plus rushing yards in their first 10 games since the 1978 New England Patriots. So you're talking about
Sam the Bam Cunningham. Come on.
Going back 40 years in time. However, doing it with a quarterback who has far greater speed than any quarterback of that time and someone who's also doing ridiculous things, maybe not ridiculous, but doing very good things as a passer. So you have this offense that feels like a throwback in terms of how much they're running. But
Steve Grogan ran 81 times that year, dude. Like, I remember that vividly. I was a 10-year-old kid. I was in love with football. They were in the Colts division. That was the year the Colts literally fell apart, and the Patriots ascended. Steve Grogan started 16 games, won 11-5, 181 to 362 for 2,800 yards, which was sort of a 3,000-yard passing was that was the 100 RBI barometer at that point.
Right.
But it was Sam the Bam Cunningham. How about that? I would not have – Andy Johnson, I might have gotten that, but I would not have gotten Horace Ivory. Don Calhoun, I do remember Don Calhoun. But, I mean, you're talking about four backs. 200 rushes by Sam the Bam, $1.50 Andy Johnson, $1.50 Horace Ivory. And the quarterback ran 81 times for 539 yards, and getting tackled in that era by like John, by like animals, by like the Steel Curtain and stuff when there were no rules at the bottom of the pile and whatnot. So, but they had Stanley Morgan, Raymond Claiborne, Mike Haynes, also caught some balls there a little bit. So yeah, there you go. That's what 1978 looked like. So I wanted the geese because somebody out there's my age and said, yeah, I remember Sam the Bam Cunningham, but man, we're going back, dude. We're talking about they weren't even normal back then. That was really, really weird to have your quarterback diving in the pile in 1978,
No question. And look at how the Ravens are doing it. And I'd say the Ravens are probably more efficient than run, I don't even want to say run first, but just primary run-based type offenses that you think of from yesteryear. I don't know how many of them were averaging 5.7 yards per carry. I don't know. Certainly none of them were having their quarterback average 11 carries per game, which is kind of where Lamar Jackson is at this point, and well on his way to around a 1,250-yard season on the ground, while also on pace now to, right now he's got 19 touchdown passes through his first 10 games. I mean, he's on track to have 30 touchdown passes. I mean, that's what kind of player we're talking about here.
Which, you know what, mirrors the kind of player he was at Louisville, right? Like, when we saw those numbers on draft night and before that, I mean, if you read Peter King's piece, and I'm going to speak to him about how silent Eric DeCosta and Ozzie Newsome were in the draft process, that nobody else in the organization really knew how much they coveted Lamar and that they were on the phone with Philadelphia to move up to make this happen. It was not 16 scouts knowing this and Kevin Byrne in on it and, James Urban. It wasn't – that's not the way it worked. Or at least the way the story is being told at this point. A time will tell from all quarters about it. But those numbers, the morning after, if you looked at that, you would, if you're a 50-year-old guy as I was when he was drafted, right, or 35-year-old guy as you, and we do this, you would look at that and say those numbers never translate. Yeah. That those numbers, 20 rushing touchdowns, 1,400 yards rushing, 3,000 yards, that's not going to translate to the National Football League. Well, it's only going to translate if you take everything else that's working in Louisville and bring that and say we're going to have these weapons. And, oh, by the way, we get to get it on a first contract and an extra year. All of a sudden, whatever the Sig Meidel and whatever the blackjack dealer in Eric DeCosta, it really needs to be lauded at this point, right? I don't know what else to say other than to say these cats do this professionally, right? And it has translated in a way that the other 31 counterparts in the NFL said no thanks to that. We'll take a tight end. We'll take a safety. We'll draft a cornerback. We'll take a tight end who used to be a pitcher in the Pirates organization, right? Like every team looked past this guy, right?
Sure. Well, and the Ravens looked past him because if they truly knew, Nestor, that Lamar Jackson was going to be an MVP in his first full year as a starter, which is the way I would vote it through the first 10 games, they wouldn't have messed around with Hayden Hurst. They would have drafted Lamar Jackson with their original pick in the first round.
And they would have traded up to get Andrews.
Right. Exactly. They would have been maneuvering to make sure that there was no way they were going to lose Lamar. Now, that aside, the reason why this works is two things. One, you have to have an organization that's all in terms of designing an offense, in terms of having the proper personnel to execute that offense, and to look at a quarterback and say, this is different from convention. This is different from the quarterback construct of the NFL or what it's been for the longest time. That's okay. We're going to embrace that. We're not going to try to fit a square peg into a round hole. We're going to do something differently. So you design that system around that quarterback skill set, and in turn, that quarterback has a growth mindset, has the drive to want to get better, and improves his completion percentage from 58% to 66% in his second year. And sure, you can pick that apart if you want and say, well, they're scheming open a lot of throws. Well, hey, isn't that kind of the point, right? I mean, the idea isn't to make life as difficult as possible for your quarterback. It's to make it as easy as possible.
The idea is to get 10 yards, literally, right?
The idea is to score points and score touchdowns. And I just said how close they are to already breaking the franchise record for touchdowns scored in a single season. I mean, they're going to shatter that by, I don't know, probably not next week, but if you look the week after that, they're probably going to break it because that's just the way this thing has been going, especially over the last month or so. But that's what you need to have. You need to have an organization, a coaching staff, a player personnel group that's going to recognize that we're not doing this the way we did when it was Joe Flacco as the quarterback. And by the way, good on that, because they didn't do a very good job building an offense around Joe Flacco the last 4 or 5 years.
And you know what they would say? Well, we paid him $25 million. We didn't have any money left, right? Or like that.
We've gone over that. That's water under the bridge.
We're 8-2 now. We can't talk about that.
Exactly. But the point is...
do we want to revisit all those blogs you wrote to Ozzy about getting more help in the secondary?
Well, hey, I stand by things that I wrote then.
Well, it worked, I guess. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to write that one right now. That's a strength.
Exactly. But the point is, you recognize that something is not working, whether it's circumstances out of your control, like some of the injuries that they had, or philosophically it's not working, self-inflicted mistakes, whatever. You pivot, and then you commit to that new direction. We talk about this all the time whenever we're talking about rebuilding in any sport. You get to a point where you feel like you're spinning your wheels. How many times did we talk about the Ravens kind of being in neutral? We even talked a couple years back after the Andy Dalton-Tyler Boyd game, and the way that they kind of reacted at that point, you wondered if there was some complacency setting in. Well, they're not complacent anymore, even if they were for a brief moment in time, because they did recognize a different way to do things and a quarterback with a special skill set that they were buying into, and they did everything in their power to build around that, and they're reaping the benefits of that now. I mean, we talked about this back in week 3, and it's fun to kind of go back and look at it now. But what was one of the things that we said at that point in time? Lamar Jackson was 2 weeks in. He had the record unbelievable day in Miami against a lousy Dolphins team. He had another really good game against an Arizona Cardinals team that competes. I think you saw that even with how they gave San Francisco everything they could handle on Sunday. But still, not a good team. And then they were going into week 3, and we were talking about Patrick Mahomes, wondering about him compared to Lamar Jackson from the context of a year ago at that point in time. Patrick Mahomes was a couple of starts into his NFL career as a starter, and they had gotten rid of Alex Smith, and you were kind of wondering, okay, do the Chiefs know what they're doing here? And you saw what happened with Patrick Mahomes in his first full year as a starter. He won the league MVP. And we kind of said at that point, well, Lamar Jackson's off to this great start after 2 weeks, and it was almost more tongue-in-cheek. Not to be disrespectful to Lamar, but just to no one was really actually thinking that he was going to be MVP of the league or be a candidate throughout the year. And now you get to late November, and you see some of the serendipity there where, oh my goodness, I mean, in week 3, Lamar Jackson went into Kansas City, and the Ravens went into Kansas City, and they lost. And, they didn't play particularly well for large stretches of that game, but he was going up against Patrick Mahomes, who was the MVP last year in his second year, and now we're talking about Lamar Jackson maybe being the favorite, but certainly being one of the top 2 with Russell Wilson. We can talk about Deshaun Watson on the back burner, and we'll see what Patrick Mahomes does over the next month. But you're talking about a kid who is clearly one of the 2 favorites, at least, for the MVP, if not the complete favorite, and he's doing it in his second year. So it really does speak to maybe even how quarterback development has changed. There used to be this thought, look at what Aaron Rodgers was in Green Bay, where you sit behind a starter for 2-3 years and you learn and you develop and you practice and you're on the scout team, and maybe you get some reps like RG3 has gotten for the Ravens late in a few games over the course of the season. But now it's very much a case of, one, teams want to find out because there's so much benefit to having a Lamar Jackson on his rookie contract, to having a Patrick Mahomes on his rookie contract. And 2, typically when you're drafting a quarterback, you're not happy with the guy that you have currently. So just to see this explode, to see it blow up the way it has, is in part some great forward thinking and some luck, because it's just like Ozzie Newsome always said, hey, I wasn't really that much smarter than everyone else drafting Ray Lewis late in the first round. I wasn't really that much smarter than everyone else drafting Ed Reed late in the first round in 2002. It's not like you draft those guys and know that you're getting Hall of Fame players. I mean, it's not the way this thing works. So, yeah, you need to be smart. You need to evaluate talent, but there's still a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of art involved, as Eric DaCosta would put it. You try to put as much science into it as you can as far as your process, but so much of it then is at the feet of Lamar Jackson saying after his first year that I had a pretty good season, but I still have a heck of a lot of work to do, and I'm going to go to work on it. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'm not going to assume that what I did at Louisville is going to be good enough for the NFL, and then that player goes to work on top of everything else you're doing, and you get what the Ravens have right now, which is an 8-2 football team, arguably the best offense in the NFL, if not the consensus almost at this point. A couple other teams you could talk about. And defensively, they're talking about a team that is looking more and more like at least a top 10 defense. So if you're talking about potentially having the best offense and having at least a top 8, top 10 kind of defense, that's a formula that's going to play. That's going to play just about every single week, and that's what we're seeing now for this Ravens team that, for my money, looks like the best in football right now.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter, and Luke at WNST.net. We got a lot of great things going on. I got to give a shout-out to Dave and everybody. I'm wearing my my full circle shirt here, so I'll be getting a shout-out on that. Hey, man, holidays coming up, cold weather coming up. Oil change, tire rotation, getting your car winterized. You can do that at Full Circle Tire and Auto, 2133 North Fountain Green Road. Find them out on Facebook. You can find them around here as well. Our friends at State Fair, we're back there on Thursday doing Baltimore Positive. Baltimore City Schools, Sonia Santalese joining us. It's a doubleheader along with Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones. This week, Maggie McIntosh is our guest out at Baltimore Positive, and, of course, Wes Moore and Thiru Vignarajah, who's running for mayor. We chatted with him down at Fadley's. We've been out at Jennings last week with Matt Skur. That was awesome stuff as well. Big thanks to all of our Baltimore Positive guests and sponsors and friends as I take a little downtime as my wife and I are going away week after next to Thanksgiving, but getting everything ready for the holidays. We've done some great conversations talking about Shop with a Cop and some other incredible stuff that are very Baltimore positive. So when you tune into AM 1570, you hear that in the middle of the day, know exactly what it is and where our mojo is. Also got to give a shout out to my man Sydney, everybody over at our friends at Charles Nusinoff and Sons. You can find them right off 695. Wave hello, honk the horn, do whatever you need to do. Jewelry, watches, engagement rings, and total purple enthusiasm for all things Lamar Jackson. 410-661-5050. Find them out on the web at charlesnusinoff.com as well. We're going to get back over to Costas soon and get some crabs. Good enough for the Today Show. I've seen some celebrities banging around. They never call me when the celebs are in. I always see it on Pete and Nick's. I'm like, hey, man, I'll come eat some cream of crab on a Wednesday night for jazz night. Cold beer, pit beef, the legend continues. Come on over to Costas and say hello. We're going to be doing some shows as well. We're up at Adams Jeep with Josh Bynes on Monday night. We're taking a little downtime through the holiday. Be back after it right before Christmas and going into our non-denominational religious experience here when we hang the purple lights, Luke Jones, known as Festivus. It's a Festivus for the rest. How many do we clinch? I mean, you're the baseball guy, right? What's our magic number?
Well, you're talking about a 3-game lead with 6 to go.
There you go.
I mean, and I know Pittsburgh and Cleveland, you can kind of look at their schedules and say, oh, it's kind of soft, but I'm sorry, I'm just not convinced that either of those teams is going on the kind of run to put enough. The Ravens have plenty of pressure to stay in position to overtake New England if the Patriots slip up. And you kind of look at the Patriots. I mean, that's kind of their division race right now. It's not the AFC North. It's competing for that first-round bye. First of all, which they're in good shape right now because you look at the rest of the AFC and Kansas City has had some losses and dealt with Mahomes, and Houston, of course, lost big time to the Ravens on Sunday. It's New England. And you look at the Patriots, we know the Ravens have a schedule that's not going to get lighter here over the next few weeks, but the Patriots, home against the Cowboys, at Houston, home against Kansas City the next 3 weeks. So I see that Patriots offense, and I see those 3 games, and I'm not going to sit here and say the Patriots are a lock to go 3-0 there. I don't believe that. So, it's just a matter of the Ravens needing to pick up one game because they have the head-to-head tiebreaker. So I think as far as clinching a playoff spot in the division, yeah, that's probably going to come at some point before Christmas, the way it's looking. But in terms of a first-round bye and potentially home field advantage throughout, which is something the Ravens have never had, there's going to be plenty to play for down the stretch, which that's fun. I mean, that's one thing to talk about where the Ravens have been the last 5 or 6 years, which was always in the playoff race other than 2015. They were in it going into Week 16, Week 17. But to be not just sitting there knowing that you're going to be in the playoffs, barring something absolutely catastrophic, but to play knowing that you have a chance to have a week off in January, knowing you have a chance to have home field advantage. I mean, that is just not a position the Ravens have been in very often. Just a couple
Oh, man, it's
times.
percolating my engine to get on a plane this week and fly out to L.A., right? Like,
Exactly. I mean,
this is Monday Night
this is
Football.
fun.
We have the biggest star. I mean, to be continued, right? Like, this is where you start getting the popcorn ready, and Thanksgiving turkey's going to be a little more moist. The gravy's going to have a little more pep. I mean, every part of this, from hanging purple lights and having a month-long sort of, thing that leads up to this, it's really going to be exciting. And, and by the way, it starts on Monday night at Adams Jeep. Josh Bynes will be joining us. Luke will be out with us as well. You can find Luke out on the internet. The buyatoyota.com audio vault, always there 24 hours a day with all of our stuff. Luke's been out in the locker room. He'll be there on Wednesday. I'll be out there this week. I'm going to be in L.A. this weekend. And we head back home for Thanksgiving and the San Francisco 49ers and Garoppolo. These are the good times. To be continued. Luke and I are going to continue talking more football around here. Make sure you signed up for our morning newspaper. All of our Baltimore Positive stuff, video, audio, all of Luke's blogs, all of my writing, all of it in one place. You subscribe. You get it every morning. It's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Always $5 down to $10 a month. And a big shout out to the Brick family that got back just in time somehow to see Lamar do what Lamar does. People are flying home to see Lamar play on 32-degree days. Again, these are the good times. So, been doing this a long time. There's a lot of enthusiasm for the radio we're going to be doing here this week, the podcast, the Baltimore Positive, the announcements we're making, and the general togetherness that we're putting together. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports and Lamarvelous.